Today is October 31st, 2020. It is Mischief Night, All Hallows Eve. It's been a very rainy day for us here in Pennsylvania. And it's also been, for me specifically, extremely exhausting. The amount of spirit activity that is around me at this time is always insane, including seeing more and more physically with my eyes and hearing things with my ears. Um, so this time of year is always interesting, and it's especially interesting when um, Halloween falls on a full moon and the second moon of the month. The energy surrounding it has been extremely intense. And for those of you that are sensitive, as empathic or energy sensitive, all your emotions, all the nonsense going on is just overwhelming. And so just keep breathing, keep allowing yourself to let go of that energy, and just keep processing. So we are doing a back-to-back live stream due to the energies have been kind of messing some things up for me. Over the past couple weeks, which I find always interesting when they do so. Where do I even begin? Overall, I just want everybody to know that at this time of the week, just before Halloween, just before a full moon, we all can feel like we're a little lost and we're a little insane, and we are those things at any given time. But around this time, it just feels worse. And just know that where you are lost, you can be found. And if you feel like you're insane, just know that we're all a little bit crazy in the end. This video probably won't be as long as tomorrow. We'll see what happens. There's a lot of spirits around, but there's also a lot of spirits that rather talk tomorrow on Halloween for whatever reason. I don't know. But so we're going to see how this goes and what happens. First off, I do want to put out there, there's a few requests, so some questions to be answered. So if you requested one, that'll be on tomorrow's, on Saturdays instead of today's, only because I'm not really prepared to look at my phone and pull out the questions just yet. So this will be some random stuff, but if yours get answered within this, great. Otherwise, I'll probably readdress it tomorrow. All right, so let's get started. First and foremost, I want to say um, the spirits are all collectively concerned for our humanity. There's a lot of hate in this world, and there is a lot of turmoil between COVID. And for those rolling your eyes when I say that word, I am very grateful that you don't know anybody who happened to get it, let alone die from it. For those of you that haven't and are terrified by it, I understand why. Misinformation and information that's not provided to us. It is something that we have not experienced in an extremely long time. And honestly, a lot of us are very unhealthy. Even if we feel like we're good, we're not. We are all under so much stress and anxiety. And even when you're really good at it, and that you may not have it affected you as much as some other people it affects, in the end, our internal side is extremely affected by stress and anxiety. So I want to just put that out there, that just be kind. We don't understand what somebody in front of you is going through. And those of you that know me well enough or are clients of mine for a long time, you know I've been through a lot, especially with losing my son. And a lot of people that meet me would never even imagine I went through that, because I don't wear that pain on the outside on a daily basis. Does it happen? Absolutely. But I would say a good 90% of my day to day, week to week, year to year, you wouldn't know this. That doesn't mean the pain is not real on the inside. It doesn't mean that my heart hurts. It doesn't mean that some days I'm physically exhausted and I don't even know how I'm walking, and let alone getting out of bed. And unless you knew that, you wouldn't know. And so when we think about it that way, we are all walking through with some form of trauma, whether it was from our childhood, whether it was just from yesterday, whether it was from 20 years ago, whether it was from 3 years ago. In my case, I've had a lot of trauma in my life, but the most significant was just 3 years ago. And when we can take a step back and understand, we may not know why that person is riding our butt when we're driving a car, or why they're cussing us out over something that they did, or why somebody forgot their mask, and instead of being humble about it and just being like, oh crap, instead they lash out and freak out on the person that mentioned it. We don't understand it and we don't see it unless we can see it outwardly. And a lot of us are really good at hiding what's going on inside of us. And that's just emotions. That doesn't count mental pain, mental disabilities. We don't know what other people are going through. I have some sense, and people with some abilities would have some sense. But we don't know. So the best thing we can all do for each other is, if we get triggered by somebody else's actions, take a breath and kind of look to see why we were triggered. Is it something that happens to us all the time? Is it something that we're having a bad day? Is it something that today's the day that somebody that you loved and care about had died, and so you're grieving in a world that is not grieving with you? There's so many reasons out there, and if we can start to change that little bit of inside ourselves, then others can start as well. Because somebody will see you do that and say, well, that was a different way to handle that. What made you think to do it that way? And then you'll tell them the exact same thing. I don't know what that person's going through. I don't know what world they live in. I don't know if this day was their day to get out of the house for the first time in whatever length of time, and everything was going wrong for them, or they're worried about being out of the house, but yet they had to be out of the house. The spirits see everything and they know everything, as if it's an instant of knowledge, past, present, and even future. So in the spirit world, it literally is this split second of time, and then magnify that by infinity. And so when you look at it that way, different perspectives start to come into play. That person who cut you off, rear-ended you, gave you the finger, the employee that stole your lunch, or took a little extra long to get there that day, or every day. And even if some of those reasons you believe might be selfish, and they might be, that's where that person is currently in and stuck. And they may never get out of it. Only we can get ourselves out of it. So take those seconds, take those moments, take those breaths, and just have that moment to rethink how we want to respond, especially if it's something we don't have to instantly respond to. So with that said, obviously the spirits are worried about us. They're concerned about us. Their hearts are all aching for us, as well as our past and what's happening and where we're going. All that energy that we're putting into that world, into our world, into the universe, into the neighborhood, into the world, honestly, It's rippling out. And when the hate, anxiety, fear tends to be more than any other feeling or emotion, it makes it extremely difficult and extremely powerful. And then that triggers us all. So collectively, the spirits want us to all start taking some breaths. Even if you try to make it once every hour, on top of the hour, set an alarm. The alarm goes off, take a breath, and move about your day. Remind yourself to breathe. I am guilty of this just as much as most people are. We don't breathe. We shallow breathe. We chest breathe. We hold it all right here because we have to keep moving. We have this going on. We have this to do. There's this, that, and the other thing. We don't breathe. As you just saw that difference when I took not even a full breath. That was just deeper than what I've been breathing. We need to look at children who belly breathe as well as animals. Animals breathe from their guts, bringing in the full breath, expanding everything just to release all that needs to be released. And we as thinking adults, teenagers, even now as early as 10, 11-year-olds, we don't breathe. When we don't breathe, we don't take those mini moments for ourselves, for our health, for our body. I took a breath. And again, I know I can do more. I know I can extend my belly out more. So during this rest of this thing, I'm going to do my best to try and breathe throughout it, just so you guys can see the difference between the first, however much, 10 minutes versus whatever happens go forward. As well as all the videos that you guys have watched, how much you see I don't breathe. Now I get if you're talking fast, which is usually what I do when it comes to the spirits, it's a little hard to breathe because you take those shallow breaths. But our spirit loved ones wants us to breathe so we can function better, we can think easier, we can be a little more patient. Okay, with that said, we are going into it. So the first message is for a Sal. And I find it funny because Sal, S-A-L, in case my words don't come out as clear, sometimes I think they don't. When I saw his name, it was put into block letters, like as if that's his style of writing, or maybe he's a graffiti artist or a graffiti artist tattooist, something like that. But definitely a blocked letter writer, especially when it comes to his name. And the person that has the message for Sal is actually a gentleman by the name of Hal, H-A-L. And they were buds, they were friends. Same letter writing, so definitely somebody who would be in the same field or same, lifestyle, whatever's happening here. But Hal wants Sal to remember how special and how unique his artwork is. And that if he's not utilizing it within paintable art, outside of freeways and things like that, a graffiti on the roads and the sideways, he needs to start doing that because he can have his own expedition. Is that how it said? Yeah, whatever. You know what I'm trying to say. As well as really start to design for tattoo artists or friends that want a specific style, or people that want a specific tattoo style, that maybe their local tattoo artist that they enjoy being a part of maybe can't come up with the exact way, but yet would be willing to tattoo the artwork on that person's body for them. So he wants you to take a step back and remember what that was and how much fun the two of you had and how you guys would process your feelings, your emotions, your everyday life through graffiti art and the joy that you had internally by expressing yourself physically like this. The next person is a Calvin, and Calvin on the other side. This is funny, and I'm curious to see, even though I won't remember this, so I'll have to go back and watch it. So I'm gonna write myself a note real quick. If this happens throughout the rest of this session, because it feels like we're doing rhyming names today. So I'm gonna go back and look. So Calvin wants Melvin to know, and Calvin would be Melvin's dad, that he wants Melvin to remember that the pain of losing him, although it was extremely terrible, it's not as painful as what you're doing to yourself now. The pain that you're experiencing now with the self-inflicted pain is a way that you think it's numbing yourself and it's how you're feeling things, when in fact you're completely disconnected from yourself, which would allow you to self-cut. But if you actually come back into your body and feel everything that you need to feel from the traumas you've experienced since your dad died, you'd be able to stop cutting, because he's telling me you want to stop cutting. Most people do. You just don't know how. So he's saying that you need to get back into your body. Well, to do that, a lot of times you need to go see a Reiki practitioner or somebody that does energy work that can help assist you, push you back into your body. I will tell you, you should see a Reiki master, because the Reiki master not only will put you back into your body, but then also identify those triggers that are pushing you back out, call you on it so that way you know what they are, and potentially assist you with letting go of some of that pain you're experiencing mentally and emotionally so that you'll stay in your body. So he says he wants you to remember that there's hope, and that's how you would do it. The next one is Alberto. Alberto here, your dad on the other side, which is also an Alberto, so a senior and a junior. He's talking in Spanish, but I am getting it translated as it's being spoken, so it's the only way I understand it. Usually when somebody doesn't speak English when they die, they tend to be able to communicate that with me because it's energy. But in his case, it's so thick that it's still a little bit more challenging for the energy, and I don't want to get it wrong. So my spirit guides are translating as fast as he's saying it. So Alberto Sr. wants to tell Junior, and he would have been referred by Junior. He very rarely was referred by his name. He wants you to know that traditionally, within your culture, you marry somebody, you stay with them, even if it's terrible. You know, you stick with it, you make it work, it is what it is. You find happiness in various aspects that you're able to embrace and change, yet still stay married and still have the family lifestyle that you guys are doing. In his death, he realizes how much that is a sacrifice. And not every person is able to bear that sacrifice. And the reason being is, not only do we get to a point where you're just so miserable and that you're lashing now out on everyone else, not only your spouse, but your children, and the disservice that you're doing to your children, and setting an example of old traditions that may not be good for somebody else. And he wants you to remember this. And he's telling you this now because you've had thoughts recently of not being able to handle the relationship. And the only way out would be to die and let yourself go, and then you can get out of this relationship. And although, yes, that is a possibility, whether you take your own life or you sabotage your own health to ensure you die early, he wants me to tell you specifically that he would not disapprove if you chose to end the relationship. The reason being is the two of you just don't go together. Every aspect of your life is miserable except for your children. But your children are seeing how miserable the two of you are with each other. And although if you do walk away, yes, there'll be a lot of animosity and anger, but that's already there. So it's not going to make a difference, except for within a year or two, everybody sees how everybody else is happy without each other, and the two of you can become friends for your children. So, from a cultural perspective, I understand how difficult that is, and he's acknowledging that as well. So, he wants you, if you really want to do this, but yet you still are not sure, seek out some therapy. Either you could do a spiritual medium who can communicate within detail with you what dad needs to say and what some of your spirit guides need to say and offer you guidance through the spirit world. Or seek out a therapist, but don't seek out a therapist who is heavily influenced by your culture, because that's a cultural societal, and that it is okay to seek out somebody who doesn't understand your culture except for the outside norms that a therapist would understand. You need to see a different perspective, and you need somebody who won't tell you, well, your culture says do this. And I'm going to blanket that as a few other family members and various people and various cultures stepped up, that is the case for anybody struggling with the same thing. Yes, our culture defined us as children, and for some of us as adults. But if we don't fit in that box and we can't conform to fit in that box, it's okay. You're not an evil person if you can't do it. You're just different and finding what works for you. And in the end, we're all different. We're all unique. We all handle things differently. Don't care if you were raised in the same household or if you're twins. We all respond differently to stimuli outside, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And it's okay to be different. And as I say that, I want to say a gentleman stepped forward who was so different that he actually killed a lot of people in life. He was not famous, not one of the famous people out there. He would have been more like a local famous kind of person. But the only reason why he didn't become nationally famous is because he didn't get caught for most of what he did. And as I talk to this gentleman, you're probably thinking, why am I talking to this guy? Why is he not in hell? Why is he, allowed to talk to me? Well, one, I do allow some negative spirits to talk to me, usually before I kick them out, remove them, and send them to the heavens. In this case, he's not evil. Yes, he did evil things when he was alive. And when he died, he realized not only how terrible of a person he was, but also what happened to him that made him a terrible person. We tend to forget. People are terrible in life, because of what's happened to them. We're not born evil. At least 99% of us are not. 99.9%, I would say, are not born evil. And those that are, it's a whole different situation. The soul never entered the body, which allowed something else to enter the body. And then that is why it seems like the child was born evil. Especially if they show exhibits of that kind of activity at such a young age, such as 1 or 2 years old. We are not born evil. We become evil. And I always find it interesting when this topic comes up, because I forget where it was. I forget which show it was or what writing it was, but I saw it somewhere where it said, even the good guys are evil to somebody's story. So this particular gentleman who last lived in about 1920s, he's not been to human form since the 1920s, when he died in the 20s. And he died when he was about 26. So do the math. You're talking late 1800s of when he was born. He was born in England. And he was born into not only poverty, but into a lifestyle where he was sexually assaulted and abused from the time he was 1 year old through the time he was 8, 9 years old. Where on his 8th, 9th birthday, he murdered the person that was violating him. And back then, a little different from like a crime perspective. There's no DNA technology. There's none of that. But at that moment, he vowed no one would ever hurt him again. And so he spent the next however many years, do the math, almost 20 years, hurting people he thought would hurt somebody else, especially children. And there was a lot of that back then, more prevalent than it is now, but I think in today's society, it's hidden a little bit better, and we need to be more observant of it. So, if he felt as if somebody was hurting a child, he'd make them disappear. A lot of them ended up in the river and then flushed out to sea. Some of them were in sewers. Some of them he didn't get away with, and they were in the streets. And those are the ones he would have gotten caught for if there was ways to figure it out. But as he went through this, and as he went through this life, doing what he thought was the good fight to stop the hurt that he experienced for so long. Obviously, we look at that a little differently. Whether somebody's guilty, we might have a different perspective about it versus somebody that's innocent. And who's to say he had the right to judge those people? Some people who have experienced that probably said absolutely. Some of you would probably say, no, nobody should be doing that. That's what we have rules for and laws for. But the 1900s, especially the 1800s into the 1900s, a completely different world, and a completely different aspect of time, one we cannot understand in today's society. He died by being put to death. He was hung because he got caught with one of the people that he killed. And it wasn't just women, it was men, mostly men. But there were some women who he saw a woman slap the child a little too hard and felt that that's the life that that child had, whether or not that was the case or not. So he was hung for one of the countless murders that he knows what they are. He's telling me it was 34 people he murdered by the time he died. And the only reason why they put him to death so fast is because he said there was many more bodies and he would continue to do it. No one thought twice to say why. No one asked him, outside of him being just a terrible person, to kill this person. So when he died and he saw everything, he felt bad. He felt guilty for his actions, especially for the few that were innocent. And he did did what a lot of us would refer to in this world as penance, in the spirit world, and he has grown into the person that he was supposed to be in life, that got robbed and taken from him. So now he's a spirit guide for some kids out there who are in these similar situations, that are being violated physically or emotionally or mentally, mostly physically, because that's what he experienced. And he's coming forward because he wants to remind people that we may think we know, and he's circling back to what some of them were saying about somebody's life or somebody's lifestyle, and we don't. And so taking that pause is great. But then there's also a lot of people out there who witnesses violent acts against children and do nothing. Whether it's they're not sure or whether they know for sure because they don't want to get involved, or they don't want their dirty laundry aired out into the streets if an investigation is warranted. But he wants me to tell everybody to remember that that's why we have such good systems placed where we can do a child advocacy report and do it anonymous, especially if we're concerned of backlash, that the parent, the guardian, the neighbor friend, whoever's doing it, could come after you. But it doesn't mean it's okay to turn your eye. And he spent his lifetime killing people that he thought deserved it. And he's telling me a good 90% of them did. Halloween is a special time for him, mostly because that brings back the childhood innocence, because we get to dress up, we get to play somebody else, play a different character. And he loves the idea that we celebrate Halloween. And he wants us all to remember that. If we can find our inner child, then our life gets a little easier. We're a little less stressed. We see the joy and wonder in things again. And we have a little bit more patience for others. He's not telling me his name, otherwise I would say it. But he said those that would even remember him are long gone at this point, and that he doesn't even realize if there's anything out there other than a hanging when he was 28 years old. Literally in 1920, I want to say. Yeah, I keep hearing 1920, 1920, 1920. Oh. And on October 31st, 1920. So if those in England have a way to look that up, by all means do so. And if you find it, please let me know. That'd be great to know this gentleman's name. But he doesn't associate to that name anymore, because that name represents a person that he was at a necessity. So for all you parents out there and guardians, or those that know of a child that just seems not okay, seems to be evil, seems to be smarter than his age or fearless than his age should say, and there's nothing physically wrong, no brain trauma, no disabilities, things like that. Even with those, you can reach out and double check. But reach out to me, because there's a chance that child is a gateway and has the abilities of a gateway currently on, which is allowing spirits to enter his body and then act out. It doesn't mean they're a sociopath. It doesn't mean they're bipolar. It doesn't mean they're ADHD. These are all labels that I challenge and will continue to challenge throughout my career, and one day show that there's a different aspect to that. But if you have a child that just does not seem right, even a teenager who is exhibiting really terrible behaviors, reach out to me. I'll do what I can. I'll be able to at least assess if there's a spiritual attachment or if there was trauma that the individual is suffering through. There is hope. I will tell you that. For your children, for your neighbor, for your best friend, whoever it is. And any of you that are labeled bipolar, ADHD, or schizophrenic, email me. There is another option. Usually that means you're still spiritually communicating. And it could get better. With that said, most of the spirits have backed off of me. So we're going to end there. So that way we can let that sink in. Because that was pretty heavy. It feels heavy because my heart feels heavy. So I will go back and rewatch this so I see what I said. Until tomorrow, when I see you guys normal, same time, 10 a.m. And we will see what everybody else has to say tomorrow for the more specific stuff.